Hey, it's your guy Tyrrell back with the interviews. In today's video, we're going to briefly analyze how Vincent Kompany's second half adjustments proved decisive in Bayern Munich's 3-0 win over 10-man Borussia Mönchengladbach. So when we break it all down and we do look at the board, we have the hosts in a 5-4-1, and you witness Bayern Munich in their same 4-2-3-1 with several changes, including the goalkeeper, where you see a whole new backline with Bischoff, Kim, and Sasha Boy with Upamecano, Goretzka joining Kimmich in that midfield zone, and then Nicholas Jackson spearheading the attack ahead of Harry Kane. But here first we're going to focus on the host shape and how Bayern Munich encountered some issues getting by them. And what you end up seeing here was that the only numerical advantage that Bayern had over this Gladbach side was their center backs against the center forward, because you have the wing backs dealing with Olise and Diaz hugging the touchline. When Kane joined the attack with Jackson, you would see 3v2 against the center backs, and then in that midfield zone they had the two central midfielders that could deal with Goretzka and Kimmich, and then with Bischoff and Sasha Boy initially inverting, the wide players could deal with them as well. To ensure that Goretzka and Kimmich could stay away from pressure in those central areas, we did witness them shift out and towards the wider half space zones just on the outside of the center backs. So Bayern's 2-4-4 ended up witnessing those central midfielders dropping off in towards that zone to make it more of a three-man backline, and that's sometimes where you would see one of the wider players pushing out to close them down. Or there were times where you would see the hosts look like more of a 5-3-2 if they had one of the central midfielders joining the line with the center forward to close down Goretzka or Kimmich in that central area. In a lot of these situations, Bayern looked like a 3-2-5 because you'd end up seeing Bischoff push from his inverted role where he was pegging back the wide right-sided player. There was the rare occasion where you'd witness Sasha Boy pushing forward into that advanced zone and occupying Dix, but for the most part, he was in a deeper inverted narrow role in the half space, and the only time where you would see Dix being occupied was when Olise shifted in towards that zone, and then you would have Bayern occupying the three center backs. But here Sasha Boy wasn't pushing forward on a consistent basis, making overlapping and underlapping runs. So when he was in that deeper zone, he wasn't offering much of a threat. The issue that Bayern encountered down their left-hand side was that they were often numerically inferior to the hosts because they had their right wing back and their right center back shifting across to deal with Diaz and Bischoff, but they'd also get their right-sided attacking player dropping deeper to ensure that it was 3v2 in that area. And there are several occasions where you end up witnessing Diaz holding up the play and dragging out the wing back, and Bischoff making underlapping runs, and then you would see that side of the pitch shift across to make it a 3v2, and even in situations where Kane would shift over to help make it 3v3, they could simply have the central center back shifting across to close down that threat. Whereas the issue on the right-hand side was that if Olise was hugging the touchline, he would drag away the wing back, and they could simply have their left-sided attacking player shifting across to make it a 1v2 because Sasha Boy wasn't pushing forward on a consistent basis. So that would leave Dix free to sweep up danger, and then you would have Kane and Jackson occupying the other two center backs. So it'd still be 1v2 in that zone, and with no underlapping or overlapping runs, there was no way to drag away a player to prevent that overload, and they still had spare numbers in their backline. It also didn't help that in 1v1 situations, whether Bayern were 11v11 or 11v10, Luis Diaz and Olise struggled to win their battles against the wingbacks, and there were several examples where they went 1v1 and simply couldn't bypass their defender, and that made for an issue that Bayern encountered because they weren't creating any overloads in those wider areas, and Diaz and Olise simply couldn't get beyond their wingback. Ultimately, even with Gladbach going down to 10 men, they simply kept their narrow shape and they adopted a 5-3-1, and Bayern encountered the same issues because Olise and Diaz were still hugging the touchline and the wingbacks could push out towards them. Gladbach's shape was so narrow and compact that Bayern couldn't penetrate through those central areas, and even if they had Jackson or Kane dropping off deeper, there were no runners breaking in behind and they couldn't play passes through that midfield zone. And simply what you ended up seeing was that with Sasha Boy not occupying any defenders in those advanced areas, areas. You would have Elise shifting in towards that zone, and then Bayern would be able to occupy all center backs with Bischoff pushing forward as well. But still, Bayern encountered the same issues because Diaz and Bischoff failed to combine successfully to bypass that right side of the pitch, whereas Sacha Boey was offering minimal to no impact and a deeper half space role at right back. Ultimately, it was that right hand side where Bayern were able to create their better chances in that opening half, and it simply stemmed with runs in towards the half space and behind, and Bayern simply bypassing Dix by playing balls over the top or playing balls around him to get runners breaking in. Initially, it was Elise occupying Dix and Kimmich from a deeper position playing the ball over the top for Jackson breaking in towards that zone, and it was the rare occasion where Sacha Boey was joining the attack and he was able to make a run in towards right half space, and Jackson took away a defender and looked to backheel the ball around him for Sacha Boey running off Dix. But when the Bayern right back looked to break in towards that penalty area, the spare Gladbach center back stepped across and they were able to clear their line. And then if you look to another example, it saw Diaz having to shift across to the right hand zone where he wasn't picked up, and that's where you see Elise in a deeper position dragging away the wing back, Sacha Boey more advanced and pulling away the center back, and that's where Elise played the ball around both the wing back and the center back for Diaz breaking in towards that zone. Now you have the run of Bischoff, Kane, and Jackson breaking in towards that penalty area, and the runs of Bischoff and Jackson drag away all the center backs and the wing backs, and Kane holds his position so that Diaz freely can pull the ball back towards him, and from this position Kane should score as he side sweeps a first time effort on goal, but it's tame and the keeper is able to push it away. And in the dying moments of that opening half, once again you have Elise dragging away two markers towards him, Diaz occupying a wing back, Kane occupying a center back and a central midfielder, and it's Sacha Boey again making a run in towards the penalty area as he's occupying a center back, and Elise is able to clip a dangerous ball in towards that 6-yard area, and ultimately it took a last-ditch tackle from Sander to ensure that Kane didn't put Bayern up ahead. So ultimately, given Bayern's late success in that opening half against the Gladbach 5-3-1, Kompany's changes weren't really surprising in terms of the personnel as he brought on Laimer and Raphael Guerreiro. Laimer to help out Diaz given their successful combinations down that left-hand side, and this saw Goretzka move to a center back role and Bischoff move into a central midfield role, and then they brought on Raphael Guerreiro, and his positioning was key as you often saw him pushing forward in towards the final third and occupying Dix. Now you had 5 Bayern players occupying all of the defenders with Elise hugging the touchline, and what you ended up seeing was that Bayern's 2-4-4 became more of a 2-3-5, and with Laimer often pushing forward, at times they were more of a 2-2-6. Within the opening minutes of that second half, you could see the immediate shift in the Bayern shape as Laimer was now free to constantly receive the ball in the left half space on the outside of the central midfield trio because they were so narrow and compact, and often what ended up happening was that Guerreiro was pushing forward to occupy the left center back and Elise was hugging the touchline. However, while Laimer was constantly free down that left hand side, Bayern still encountered issues bypassing the trio that was shifting across to make it a 3v2, and Laimer consistently made runs on the underlap to receive the ball, but Diaz wasn't playing it in towards him because they were doing a very good job of tracking those runs. Whereas any chance Guerreiro could get, he was joining the attack in the penalty area or simply sitting on the edge of the penalty area, dragging away a marker and looking to join the attack when fitting. Down the left-hand side, Bayern enjoyed more success with Laimer making overlapping runs, and that's something that we didn't witness from Bischoff. And it wasn't that Bayern were creating chances here, but now Diaz was getting a bit of an opening because Laimer's runs were a threat and they were creating a bit more space for him. But whenever Diaz was looking to get shots on goal, they were getting blocked, and whenever he was looking to play crosses into towards the box, if they weren't cleared, they were also blocked. On the rare occasion where Diaz played the overlapping run in towards Laimer in left half space towards the byline, Laimer's cross in towards the penalty area that saw Guerreiro joining Kane in the 6-yard box ended up seeing that cross cleared at the front post. Whereas the best opportunity that Guerreiro got into prior to another Bayern change witnessed him combining with Nicholas Jackson at the edge of the penalty area where they dragged away 2 markers, and while Guerreiro received the ball freely in the penalty area, as he looked to cut on towards his left foot to get across his marker, you saw one of the central midfielders recovering and stepping in to make a challenge to clear the line. Ultimately, this led to Nicholas Jackson departing for Serge Gnabry, and this was impactful because Serge Gnabry has the positional flexibility to move across the pitch and receive the ball, whereas you witnessed several several occasions prior to and after the opening goal, where you had Serge Gnabry receiving the ball ahead of the midfield bank, shifting out into both flanks to receive the ball, and then breaking into attacking areas where he could serve as an outlet to drag away a right wing back or a left wing back, and helping Bayern attempt to combat the overload that Gladbach were occupying in those wider areas. Ultimately, the biggest caveat here was that all three men that were substituted were involved in some aspect to one of these Bayern goals, and the positional changes did play a key factor as well. Because when you look to the winner, you end up seeing Serge Gnabry shifting over to that left-hand side to create the 2v2 with Laimer making the overlapping run. You have Bischoff at the edge of the box, and you end up seeing Luis Diaz in a central area breaking towards the penalty area, with Guerreiro occupying a center back. Gnabry ends up playing the ball across his marker for Laimer on the overlap, and Laimer ends up pulling the ball back into the path of Diaz and focus on Gnabry breaking in towards the penalty area, and that's something that we didn't see from Diaz whenever he was looking to play those overlapping runs or the underlapping runs. Diaz does a very good job of backheeling the ball in towards Gnabry, and Gnabry ends up shifting the ball out towards Kimmich, who has his initial shot blocked, but then he finishes superbly to put Bayern ahead. And while we witnessed great counter-pressing in the build-up to Bayern's second goal, it follows Bischoff playing the ball in towards Olise ahead of Elvedi, and then you see Guerreiro occupying Dix. That ends up seeing Olise turning freely at the edge of the penalty area, and while Elvedi should step towards Olise, you end up seeing Dix pushing forward to Olise, which leaves Guerreiro free and creates an overload with Gnabry on that right-hand side. It allows Olise to play the ball across the center back for Guerreiro, who's goal side of the wing back, and Guerreiro is able to receive the ball freely because Gnabry's presence forces the wing back to stay put, and from there he doesn't gamble, and it allows Guerreiro to break freely on goal and finish coolly beyond the keeper. And then in the build up to the third goal, Lennart Karl as a substitute is involved as he replaced Diaz, and Serge Gnabry pushed out towards the left hand side, and it's a simple switch of play out towards Goretzka that is going to pull away a midfielder, and what you end up seeing here is that Goretzka waits for the pressure to come towards him, and he plays the ball around the pressure for Guerreiro, who's unmarked, and Lennart Karl's also unmarked ahead of the center backs. You have Guerreiro receiving the ball in a dragging pressure towards him, and there's still no tight pressure on Lennart Karl. And what's important here is that when Karl receives the ball, you could see that none of the Gladbach defenders get tight towards him, and it allows Karl to carry the ball centrally as Guerreiro's movement's going to drag away his marker, and Karl's initial marker simply doesn't step, and from there it creates an avenue for Karl to break towards the penalty area, and from this position he curled a stunning effort in towards the left top corner. So as you can see, despite encountering issues with their overall balance in the opening half, Kompany deserves credit here for his subtle adjustments and effective utilization at the bench to ensure Bayern remained perfect to start their Bundesliga title defense.